librarian at the Amy Van Andel Library.
And I'm Susan. I work at Comstock Park in Plainfield.
And today we're going to talk about some amazing chapter books that we're excited to share with you.
Yes. The first one I'm going to talk about is The Wretched Waterpark by Kirsten White. This is the first in a series called Sinister Summer, and it features 3 kids, twins Theo and Alexander, and their older sister Will, who are mysteriously dropped off for the summer to stay with their Aunt Sophronia, who seems very odd. It is. She doesn't know how often children need to eat. She doesn't understand how to use a cell phone. She seems to glide along the floor versus walking. And she seems to just appear places. So Aunt Sophronia suggests that they spend the week at the Fathoms of Fun water park, which sounds super fun. However, the park is very strange. The water rides are scary. The employees wear creepy black dresses and carry parasols, and they deliver ominous messages like, "Don't run! That's how people disappear!" So the 2 younger kids set out to discover why the water park has so few people, how the owner of the water park disappeared into the wave pool, never to be seen again, who the mysterious figure at the top of the tower of a slide is, and other mysteries involving the park. This book definitely gave me Lemony Snicket vibes. It was weird and fun and only slightly scary. And it is available as a book, as an audiobook on Libby, and as an ebook on Libby.
I love the cover, too.
Yes.
That's amazing.
And I can't wait to read book 2.
Awesome. Okay, so the first book I have to share is called Nara and the Immortal Palace by M.T. Khan. I would recommend this if you like Rick Riordan, the Rick Riordan Presents book. This one is a James Patterson Presents, but has a lot of mythology in it. So, 12-year-old Nara goes to work every day in a mica mine. She's working alongside other children in dangerous conditions, but because she and her mom are the only ones working in their family, she has to go and she has to help support her brothers and sisters. So one day she's working in the mica mine, and she goes home and finds out that later in the day there was a collapse in the mine and some of the kids didn't get out, including her best friend Faisal. So she goes back afterwards, after they've cleared everything out, and starts digging and looking for the missing children. And she digs and digs and digs, and she digs into another world. So this other world on the other side of the mica mine is full of jinn, which are magical genies. And she finds all of the children there working in this big hotel. It's like a Las Vegas fancy hotel. But the children aren't working the mine anymore. Now they're trapped in this hotel and they can't get out. So it's up to Nara and her best friend Faisal to try to find a way to get everybody back home again. So it's pretty exciting. It has a message about children working in mines, because that's an actual thing. The mica mines, they mine this kind of sparkly powder that is used in makeup, and she finds that the jinn are using mica as makeup in this alternate world too. So there's a lot of comparisons between the conditions in her world and in the jinn world. But I thought the mythology was really interesting. There's an adventure, of course. They get into a lot of jams and have to find their way back to reality out of this alternate universe. And the author's note, I learned a lot about children working in mines as well. So it was really interesting. But this book is available in print as an ebook and e-audiobook, Nara and the Immortal Palace. Highly recommend.
All right. I have this doesn't say it's a fantasy, but it's kind of a fantasy. The Problem with Prophecies by Scott Rankin is about a 7th grader named Celia Cleary, and she's been born into a magical family. It's not a magical family like Harry Potter, but her family members are able to see the future in various ways. So on the 4,444th day of her life, Celia has her first vision, but she isn't prepared for what she sees. She envisions that Jeffrey Johnson, a quiet boy who lives down the street, is going to be hit by a car and die. So even though her grandmother warns her not to, Celia cannot help but prevent Jeffrey's death. He doesn't die. Yay, she celebrates. However, she then has another vision showing him dying in a different way.
Oh my gosh.
So she starts preventing his death over and over and over again, and it starts to take a toll on her schoolwork, as you can imagine, because she has to be wherever he is to prevent his death. And it starts to take a toll on her friendships, just kind of neglecting her friends because she's preventing Jeffrey's death over and over again. But she can't give up because she's beginning to like Jeffrey, more than a friend.
Oh.
So, is Jeffrey's death inevitable? You have to read The Problem with Prophecies and find out. Wow. This is available as a book, and as an ebook on Libby.
Interesting.
Yes. And his name is Reintgen, and I thought, well, how do you pronounce that? But then his website is called itspronouncedrankin.com. Which I thought was quite hilarious.
That's amazing. Would you like to do another?
Oh, yes. Yes, this one is also sort of fantasy, sort of funny, sort of realistic, science fiction. I don't know exactly what it is.
It's all. I read that book too, and it's kind of all together.
It's The End of the World, and I'm in My Bathing Suit by Justin Reynolds.
Which is a great title.
Yes.
By the way.
And there he is in his bathing suit. It is the story of 12-year-old Eddie Gordon. He has come up with the most genius plan ever to avoid doing the chore that he hates the most, which is laundry. So if he can wear all of the clothes he owns over the course of the summer, he'll only have to do laundry one day, the day before school break ends. He plans to wash everything on the last day of summer vacation. So on the next to last day of summer vacation, he's really excited about attending the annual beach bash. However, Eddie's monstrous pile of dirty laundry is found by his mom. It comes flying out of his closet and covers his entire room. She's not impressed by his plan, and she tells him, dude, you're staying home to do laundry while we go to the beach bash without you. So he's stuck at home, missing the bash, doing his whole pile of laundry, but mid-cycle, the power goes out. So with his first load of laundry wet and the rest of his stuff still filthy, he sets out to explore the seemingly empty neighborhood, because everyone's at the bash, in his glow-in-the-dark swim trunks, his flip-flops, and a beach towel. He soon meets up with some other neighborhood kids who didn't go to the bash. Xavier, who was shaving his hair when the power went out, so he's mid-haircut and half his head is shaved. Sonia, who has spent her entire summer break trying to beat a video game and was mid-battle with the final game where she was going to win and the power went out. And siblings Trey and Sage, who are dealing with major sibling drama, as happens. So as they explore and try to attempt to find out what happened, they realize their families aren't coming back anytime soon. Night falls, and they think maybe they're not just the only people left in the neighborhood. Maybe they're the only people left anywhere. And there's a sequel that I think you'll have to read to find out what happened.
What happened? That was a funny book. It was funny. I liked it. Switching gears, I wanted to share the book Yonder with you by Allie Standish. This is historical fiction, and it takes place in a small North Carolina town during World War II. The narrator's dad, Danny's dad, is overseas fighting the war, and he's home with his mom, and she's pregnant. So he's kind of taking care of her and taking care of the house. He has an older friend named Jack, who is his constant companion. They deliver newspapers together, and Jack kind of takes care of Danny because his dad's not around. But we find out later that Jack's home life is not so great. His dad was in World War I and came back angry and with PTSD, so he was violent towards Jack and his mom too. So Jack actually came to live with Danny for a little while when things weren't great with his dad. So one day, Danny goes out to do the paper route and Jack doesn't show up. So we kind of spend the rest of the book in flashbacks, going back and forth as to what life was like when Danny and Jack were together, and now Danny's trying to find him and figure out where he went. So Danny enlists a friend named Lou who loves Nancy Drew, and so she's ready for this mystery, and they kind of go through the town and go and backtrack and try to figure out what happened to Jack. So what I liked best, so there was a little mystery involved too. What I liked most about this book is that it took place during World War II, but in the United States. So I think when I think of World War II fiction, it's usually happening in Germany or in France. And this was right here at home. So we learned about what they did at home during World War II. People were getting drafted. People were trying to escape the draft. And that, when they ran from it, there was shame on their family, but they just really wanted to stay alive. So we see both sides of that. There was poverty and prejudice in their town. They had a black family that lost their farm because the bank decided that they didn't want them there anymore. So you see a lot of parallels between what was happening during World War II overseas and what was happening right here. A lot of interesting information in the author's note too. This title is available in print only, but if you like World War II fiction and would like to read a little different take on it, I would recommend Yonder by Allie Standish.
Just to learn about World War II, that's not about
It's
Nazis.
different, yeah.
All right, I have a historical fiction book too, The Door of No Return by Kwame Alexander. It looks really fat, but it's written in verse, so it does not
I
take
love
a
a
super
book in
long time.
verse.
Yes, me too. It is a very serious novel. It opens in 1860 in the Ashanti Kingdom in current-day Ghana, which is a country in Africa. And this kingdom is powerful and has a very rich culture. Their kingdom is so wealthy that the European people call it the Gold Coast because they have a lot of gold there that they mine. But in addition to gold, they also traded people for money. There had always been a tradition of selling war captives to other kingdoms or selling family members to someone that they owed a debt to. But then white men came looking for people to sell to the United States, and the slave trade really increased. So in this story, a young boy named Kofi is living there with his family in Upper Quante, where he is a star swimmer, and he has a crush on his friend Amma. He lives a pretty simple life, but he's happy. He goes to school where he learns English and fights with his cousin over who's a better swimmer and other things. After a tragic accident, and it was an accident, but Kofi's brother is blamed for it, his brother is taken for revenge, and soon Kofi is also taken. And he gets sent through what they call the Door of No Return. And things very quickly get much worse from there. This is the first in a trilogy, so if you like it, you'll have to read the next book to find out what happens to Kofi. This was a really great book, but I think it's a book that parents might want to read alongside their kids. There's some violence in it, although it's not graphic or salacious, but I think kids might have some questions about some of the events. And after I finished it, I did some research on the Ashanti Kingdom because I was curious about some of the history. I didn't know anything about it. And it was a great book, even though it was a very serious topic. This book is available as a book on CD, an ebook, and an e-audiobook. I listened to it, and the narration is beautiful.
Does the author narrate it? Do you know?
I don't honestly know.
Oh, okay.
But it was gorgeous.
Okay.
Gorgeous narration.
Wonderful.
The Door of No Return.
Thanks. I think I'm going to do this one next. Switching gears again, this is Mary Downing Hahn, What We Saw, and it's a thriller. It really is a thriller. It's labeled mystery because there is mystery involved, but if you're familiar with Mary Downing Hahn, she writes a lot of horror, chapter book horror, but this one is a little bit different than that. So in this book, two friends have a super boring summer going on right before 8th grade, Skylar and Abby. They ride their bikes around town, they go to the mall, they go to the library, but nothing really is happening in town. So they start riding their bikes to the other side of town. And, you know, the other side of town is
There's always another side of
kind of
town.
shady. But they find this little patch of woods, and there's an old treehouse in it. And they're going to climb up in this treehouse every day, and they read books, and they talk, and they keep their eye on these two kind of bully boys that ride their bikes around, and they don't want to interact with them, but they're just kind of watching the world around them. So one day, they see two cars pull up underneath their little treehouse, and one person gets into the other car and drives off. So they're imagining what's happening. There's some people meeting and getting into other cars, and they keep going back the same time every week, and they see the same thing happening. But one day, the car, a woman is driving it, pulls up, and they pretend to be detectives and make up this story about what's happening. Shortly after, the girls learn that one of their teachers from school is missing. So they're wondering if what they're witnessing is something they should tell people about, because are these two things related even? But it seems like there are mysterious things happening in these woods, and the girls disagree on if they should tell somebody, and it gets kind of stressful because all of a sudden they're seeing this car that they've been watching on the news, and is it related to this missing person? And things start kind of spinning out of control, and it was one of those books that I was like, I'm just going to read one more chapter, and oh, maybe I'll read one more chapter, and then I had read the whole book. I read it in one sitting. I just needed to find out what happened between these girls, and you kind of have a feeling of dread when you're reading it, like you know something bad's going to happen, but it was pretty intense. It was suspenseful and it was a thriller, but I highly recommend, if you like a page turner, What We Saw by Mary Downing Hahn.
Like a page turner.
It was a good one. It was not what I expected, but I really liked it. I recommend.
Right. We're almost out of time. Do you want to talk about Tumble?
Oh, I really do. Do you want?
That's fine. You go with that one.
Okay, so we are almost out of time. That went by really fast. I do want to talk about Tumble by Celia C. Perez, because I love this cover so much. It's so amazing.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's very colorful. But this is the story of 12-year-old Addie, and she has some big changes happening in her life. Her mom is expecting a little brother, and her stepfather wants to adopt Addie before the baby is born so that they can be one family together, which sounds amazing, but Addie has some reservations because she's never met her biological father. And she just wonders, well, what would he think of me being adopted, my biological father? But her mom doesn't really want to talk about him. She found a picture underneath her mom's bed of Addie when she was a baby and her mom and what could be her dad. So she starts doing some investigating. There's a little mystery there too. And she finds a yearbook and finds a picture that matches the picture under her mom's bed and finds out who her dad is, her father is. And she makes contact with him, she makes a plan to meet him, and he doesn't show up. Well, he does, but he's late. And she thinks he's not going to show up. He shows up. So they meet each other, and his name is Manny, and he drives Addie out to meet his extended family. And she finds out his whole family is luchadores, which are wrestlers. And they wear masks, and they wear costumes. Her twin cousins that she didn't even know she had wrestle as a tag team. And her grandmother, whom she didn't know she had, has a wrestling ring in their backyard. And she learns so much about, like, this is her family that she's just met. So there, of course, are some challenges with navigating this new family. And her dad isn't always available, but she finds all of these other family members that are there for her as a constant. And it's just a great journey of Addie finding who she is and where she fits with both of her families. So I would highly recommend Tumble by Celia C. Perez. It was a great story.
It's like the WWE.
It was. I thought it was fantastic. Lots of great images and costumes and very exciting. I liked it a lot.
All right, well, we're kind of out of time, but...
One more.
Oh, one more? Okay. Coming Up Cuban by Sonia Manzano is historical fiction. Mm-hmm. It's about four young people, Ana Miguel, Zulema, and Juan, who are growing up in Cuba in 1959, soon after Fidel Castro led a revolution to take over the country. So even though it's fiction, that is a real event. Mm-hmm. So Ana's father is just back after fighting in the revolution, and Ana's family wants to help build a better country But then they realize that Fidel is not the great leader he said he'd be. Miguel is sent to the United States without his parents in a program called Pedro Pan, like Peter Pan.
Yeah.
He comes from a pretty wealthy family, but ends up in an orphanage in Miami for a while, and he has to learn new ways to stand up for himself. Zulema is from a farming family, and she and her family learn to read thanks to Fidel Castro's promise that everyone in the country will be literate. However, they're only allowed to read things about how fabulous their new government is. And Juan loses his parents after they move to the United States. They plan to send for him, but they're killed in a car accident before they can do that. So he lives with his grandfather, and though he starts out participating in military exercises with a group of other young men, he becomes upset with the ideals that they have, and he thinks Fidel Castro maybe isn't that great after all. And after his best friend betrays someone close to him, he starts to question about whether Fidel Castro's new government is all that great. So it just kind of tells you the history of Cuba at the time, which, I've never read a kid's book or even an adult book that talked about that, and it was really interesting. Coming up Cuban.
Awesome. Well, thanks. That was exciting. We hope that you found your next favorite book, and if you see one of us in our libraries, we hope that you'll come talk books with us.
Absolutely.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.